Hey everyone, welcome to Beyond the Lane. I am here, Wynne, your host, here to talk to you and to some guests I have about League of Legends, the World Championship, and the upcoming Challenger Series season. Speaking of all those things, I see no reason to waste more time. We should begin right now. And joining me to help me begin is the one, the only Reed Melton. Reed, tell me, and be honest, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good today. I had a long night last night, but it's good to be on the show to talk about some Challenger action.
We will, but before we get to that, we have to, as any good League fan would, talk about Worlds, at least briefly. SK Telecom T1, Coup Tigers in the final. Your thoughts?
I think my thoughts are just about the same as a lot of people who have been thinking about that. The semifinal is a lot of European pride on the line, and still very, very impressive games, but just dominant matches, 2-3-0s. Not a whole lot to talk about there, just domination by the Korean teams. But going into the grand finals, and I know Monte Cristo talked a little bit about this in some of his outside communications about the teams going in there. The Coup Tigers, a little bit of a weak spot in the jungle for Hojin, so I'm not sure that's necessarily the strongest point for either one of the teams, with Bengi and Tom subbing out periodically during the regular LCK season for SK Telecom. So I guess all eyes is going to be primarily on the junglers, and of course you got to keep an eye on the mid lane. Faker is going to be in there, and for Kuro, he showed some inspired play during their best of 3 versus Fnatic. But I mean, really, how can you adapt to not playing against just one mid laner in Faker, but also EasyHoon, who has been talked about subbing in periodically during that series as well. So I'd still give it to SK Telecom, but I do think that if Hojin shows up in the jungle and Coup Tigers can definitely put up a good fight, I'd still say at best a 3-2 for SKT.
You say you hope we're going to see Faker. I hope we're going to see Faker. I mean, he could go, we could see 3-0 SKT with EasyHoon in there all 3 games, never see Faker.
Right. I saw people tweeting about that during the games while they were being played, the SK Telecom series versus Origin. And you just kind of thought to yourself, well, why are people angry that EasyHoon's playing? Like, he's winning them games. And they're like, well, because I want to see Faker play. I was like, no, the team just wants to win the game. So if they can do that with EasyHoon, I'm down for that. And especially interesting for even seasons past Worlds is how long can both EasyHoon and Faker coexist on the same roster? So this is actually a really cool opportunity to see 2 of the world's best mid laners on the same team, and you might even get a chance to see both of them.
If you want to see Faker, just watch Spectate Faker. Easy as that. No problem there. I'm going to be watching personally the top lane where you have Smeb and Marin. That is a matchup to look out for. Smeb played very well.
Ooh, yeah, Smeb, especially in his matchup versus Huni, was thinking. I was thinking to myself, okay, well, we've got Huni, a guy that actually trained with Samsung while they were in Korea practicing for last Worlds. Kind of got noticed by Fnatic and brought over to their roster for the season, and it's just been completely dominant. But in his series versus the Coup Tigers, Smeb just beat him on champions that you wouldn't necessarily expect. That he played both sides of the Hecarim matchup and won. So it's like Smeb is just ridiculous. And for Marin, a lot of players have thought of him as, the quintessential top laner, but not because he's, kind of like Smeb and just wins that 1v1 matchup super hard, but because he has such good game sense. There's a match between SKT and CJ from the regular LCK season where he teleported behind a team that was going to win and stopped the minion wave from pushing in so they wouldn't be able to take the turrets. Just really good teleport timing. And I think that's what's going to set the difference between them, not necessarily their 1v1.
We'll find out. Hopefully we have more than just a good first game. We had a good first game with Fnatic and Coup Tigers, a good first game with SKT and Origin. Not so much good second and third games. Hopefully we get a full
third game.
Good series here. An entire great series. That'd be fantastic. Even if it's a sweep, just give me more than one good game. That's my big Christmas wish.
Right. And especially Worlds finals, previous Worlds, a lot of times you want the 2 best teams, but sometimes one of those teams is just so Worlds better than the other, and that can make it a little bit more dominant performance for one team. But I just like watching League of Legends, so if the games are good, that's all I care about.
Speaking of watching League of Legends, I understand you are a watcher of the Challenger Series. Now, we have some teams moving on from the NACS to the NALCS this coming split. I want to talk about a couple of them, in particular Renegades and Coast. Do you see either of these 2 teams being able to have a major impact in the spring split in the LCS, maybe even playoff impact?
I think as long as Renegades have been a team, even back from their days as Misfits, everybody saw, Alex Ish coming into the team. Everyone knows that guy is world's talent, no matter what team he's on. And so a lot of hype behind that team when they were in the Challenger Series. Now that they've made LCS, I don't think that came as a big surprise to anyone, because for most people, watching the Challenger scene, it was just like, hey, let's watch Renegades or Misfits just crush everyone else. Now that they're finally in the LCS, still some question about how exactly they're going to do. I know look back towards Enemy Esports, as they started out with a decent performance in LCS but had troubles later on. So some question marks, but I would say there's a lot of experience and just in general a very good team atmosphere there on the team. Some questions regarding their AD carry position. I know Jeebus was brought in, so we're still waiting to see exactly what roster both Misfits or not Misfits anymore, both Renegades and Coast are going to play. Because I know that's also been a question for Coast, although I think it would be very difficult, at least for me, to see them not doing better than they did in previous seasons.
Now, we do have a upcoming Challenger Series without Renegades, without Coast. So we'll talk about the teams to look for there. Liquid are going to be involved. We have Arena Online, who are new ownership, and they're going to have, I think, Seraph and Kez and Ninja going to be in the lineup. We have Cloud9 Tempest with Meteos spearheading things over there from the jungle.
Right.
For now, I still am kind of hoping that since Cloud9's looking for a jungler to go with a high potentially supporting, perhaps they could just plug in Meteos there. Just throwing out ideas, spitballing here. But let's talk about the Challenger Series season coming up with these teams. Who are you looking for as being an early favorite?
I think once again, it does depend on the roster, but Arena Online definitely looks like the front runner. They were LCS caliber last season, and even though they had the worst score in the league, everyone would tell you that most of that is due to not having been able to field their entire roster all split. And as soon as they got Ninja and Emperor onto the team, they started playing really, really good games. A shout out to editor for the Score, Nulu, who won tons of money betting on or doing fantasy esports for Arena Online, or then TDK, the first time they played with their whole roster, because he had faith in those new players coming in and being able to carry the team. And Ninja's sticking around. I honestly think Ninja is one of the best mid laners in North America now that he's come over here to play. So I can't see Team Arena Online not doing exceptionally well next season. And while we don't have full rosters for teams like the new Cloud9 Tempest roster with Meteos, and I think they just recently announced that Keith would be playing for them. It's going to be exciting for me to see what happens with Cloud9 Tempest roster, because they already have ex-LCS talent, and Keith had a good showing in LCS, and Meteos was one of the best junglers in LCS during his time there. So I'm excited to see how these teams really flesh out as we get prepared for this next Challenger split.
Are there any free agent players you'd like to see get picked up by one of these teams who you think are right there waiting to break out in the Challenger Series?
A guy I've been keeping an eye on is this guy named Wynne King. He subbed in for Team Liquid Academy last split when they were playing their Challenger games, if I'm not mistaken. And he's actually really, really strong. He's Chinese AD carry. I think he lives in Canada, if I'm not mistaken. But I know some teams have been looking at him, and I really hope to see him out there. I know one new organization, we haven't necessarily talked about this, and once again, an incomplete roster, has been Ares Esports. You can think of it kind of like Fusion V2, a lot of the same people behind that. Fusion's ex-analyst Hawkeye is their owner, so you can look at that and be like, wow, this team's coming together. They've announced Chunky Fresh and Trance Therapy, two of the old Fusion players, but they've also got this guy from European solo queue named Zednik. I think the last time I saw him play was at like 2014 DreamHack, so it's been a while. But he's been brought over from Europe to play from them in the mid lane, and it's going to be exciting to see what other talent sort of migrates between regions, both China, Korea, and also Europe. How much of that's going to come into the North American Challenger scene?
We have a question here from chat, and it's with regards to Worlds and the unfortunate 0-10 run. I should say, by the way, if we're going to have 0-10, shouldn't 0-6 also be a meme? The semifinal performance, just
not as much of a meme in 7-1. I feel like that may strike a few more chords out there.
Just enough memes already. But there was a 0-10 performance. There's a charge from one of our chatters that perhaps North American teams were plagued by an issue of only having one good strategy to play. And it makes sense because we saw CLG finish the first week in first place. We saw Cloud9 finish the first week in first place. TSM were in position to still possibly qualify for the knockout round. They beat LGD Gaming, of course, who didn't. So we had all three North American teams in good position, two of them in prime position to move on, when the opponents had time to figure them out, to break down the strategies. Cloud9, of course, had their Siege comp with, I think they were playing a lot of Tristan on Sneaky, and then CLG had the one thing they were doing, and then Coup Tigers broke it down. Is that a problem that North American teams have to fix overall, where they have to have more than one strategy? And if so, why would these American teams come to Worlds with only one good strategy ready to play?
With the most impressive performance, I thought at Worlds was by Cloud9. They came in as the seventh place North American team, and then went 3-0 early on. And everybody's just like, what is happening? And a lot of people say that North American teams underperformed at Worlds, and I think this was talked about on several other League of Legends talk shows. And I actually don't think that at all. For Cloud9, so what? They had one good strategy. They won 3 games in the hardest League of Legends tournament in the world after struggling so much last split. So I'm just awestruck that they were able to even have that much of an impact after so many difficulties. I was really impressed with that. But the real, I think it's better to talk about it as a strength than a weakness. So for North American teams, you could say, hey, well, they brought one strategy. That strategy was weak. But I think it's more of a strength of the other international teams that they played against to say, look, this is the strategy these guys are running. Let's break it down and be able to counter that. I feel like if more teams were that adaptable and could isolate the weaknesses in other teams' strategies, maybe that would help them not only just have more than one strategy, but also be able to bring the correct one that they would need to counter strategies or themes that they've been seeing from other teams.
I say go hire some Korean coaches. That'll fix everything. No problem. I think I saw SKT's coach.
All we need is more Koreans. I mean, you saw the secret picks for how Monte Cristo picked teams that would win. It's just like, which team has more Koreans? Well, right. I'm not sure that's quite the secret.
His pick'em was apparently a dumpster fire in the first week of the group stage, so I wouldn't always go with
I think everybody's was, to be fair. If you're that one guy, Jared, who has the perfect pick'em, I want to know how you did it.
There were a few through the first week. There were like a handful of them. I always take analysis. Predictions I'm not so keen on from anybody, frankly. I don't trust anyone's predictions. I don't trust a single one. Not even from you, Reed. Not even.
Ouch, that hurts, Jared. I thought we had something.
No, you were wrong. Now, kind of scaling it back here, looking a little more broadly at talking about Challenger Series and the LCS, we have a trend now, it's been established for a while, where when teams qualify for the LCS, they just kind of do whatever they want with the spot. They buy up 5 new players, perhaps. Now you can officially buy a spot. You can buy a team and just own a new spot because you paid money for it. It's a very mercantile approach to setting up the LCS teams. It raises questions about how we have a farm system for players in kind of the minor league system. There really isn't a minor league system now because you just have this movement of teams according to money, basically. And when a team does get to the LCS, they're just going to buy up new players anyway, for the most part. So what is your thought on kind of maintaining the system through which new players can funnel their way into the LCS and be found by big organizations who need new and fresh talent?
Well, if you follow traditional sports, there's a very well-established minor league system, single, double, triple A, and then there's a draft into the major leagues. And so I think eventually maybe that will be the way to go, but I'm not really sure that we're there yet. And so now if you see a good player, maybe he just plays solo queue, maybe he's on a challenger team, and you want him for your LCS team, you say, look, you want to play in the biggest league in whatever region you're in, come play for us and we'll pay you money for it. And I don't necessarily disagree with that because theoretically you should want to see this team, the strongest teams with the strongest players playing. But the way that they make their rounds between teams, still a little bit shaky on exactly how that all works out. There's certainly not a lot of regulation there. And whether or not there needs to be, for me, I've always been more focused on the players. It's like, are the players happy with where they are and with how they transfer between teams? I know several times, if you look at Forgiven when he was on Copenhagen Wolves, he was unable to play for other teams because CW still held his contract. And I know that's happened to some challenger players, and all I want to see is an environment where talent is rewarded and where players are where they want to be, rather than being hindered by not being able to play for good teams that want them but that they can't go to. So I'm not sure exactly what the perfect format is for that, but I do know that I've been extremely happy to see players. I think Keith was a big example of this last split, where you can have this challenger player who's really good in solo queue and things like that, bring him into an LCS level team and have him still perform there, showing that just because you're not in LCS or you're not in a challenger team doesn't mean that you don't still have a ton of talent.
Reed, I appreciate your perspective here and your words on this. I do want to end with one more question, and it's pertinent, and I'll get to why it's pertinent pretty soon. And by the way, we have a player by the name of Steelback coming on for the interview in just a few moments, so stick tuned on for that. But Reed, your top 3 players in the world today.
Top 3 players in the world today. Well, I don't know. If I leave off Smeb and Gorilla from my top 3 list, then I don't know how much people will like me for that. But I do definitely think that you could pretty much close your eyes and point at the SKT roster and come up with a pretty good list of players. I know that China really underperformed at Worlds, so maybe listing Chinese players doesn't feel very good to teams or to people who are just like, well, they didn't do very well in their group, so they're not very good players. Let me just tell you, this guy named Imp, he's a good player, all right? So his team didn't work out because of, coaching issues behind the scenes, but I definitely put Imp up there. I also put, of course, Faker pretty much in any top 3 list, no matter what you want to call him. And as another player that I would say is, one of the top ones, I don't know. I was really impressed by Marin as a top laner, not just because he is on the best team and the team that wins everything tends to have pretty good stats for their players, but because he just shows a transcendent level of understanding as far as what he is needed to be doing on the map, whether that's just having the humility to listen to calls that your team is making or the split-second decision-making to make plays that save your team games. Definitely put him up there, maybe in the 3rd spot underneath those 2.
Well, we're all going to keep that in mind, Reed, as Smeb steamrolls Marin in the final and makes it look terrible.
I got your Twitter on lock. It's in its own separate tab, and I am going to tweet you as soon as that totally doesn't happen.
I'm not predicting it. I'm just saying, if it happens, I will remind you that you said this, and then,
okay. Well, I guess I'm under the ball there, but I think I'm pretty confident about that.
You are here for the purpose of being put underneath a giant ball. That's your purpose.
Gosh.
Yeah. So, again, stay tuned. Steelback talking to us about League of Legends and Fnatic and Worlds and his future coming up soon. But first, we're going to hear from some of the best players in the world who they think are the best players in the world. See what I did there? See the transition there? Very smooth, right? As well as a recap of the weekend's action, all coming to you right now. Stay tuned.
Who do you think are the top 3 players in the world?
Right now? Ooh, hard.
최고의 3명이요. 정말 어려운 질문인데.
As I said, it's really hard to say who is the best, but I think Faker is really smart.
Faker?
Faker definitely number 1. Unfortunately, Imp didn't show up at this tournament, so at the moment it's hard to kind of point to him. I'd say Sumday's way up there for me. Gorilla, probably, just based on this tournament.
Baby Ben and Faker and Bang.
Bang, Marin, Faker.
Faker, Imp, and
너 집어라.
에?
너 집어라.
에이. Godby.
See, you just trolled me like that.
Marin, Faker, Bang.
Faker.
이게 아무나 해.
Funi? Wait. Smith?
Top 3 players in the world right now are...
세계 최고 3명 선수는 누구라고 생각하십니까?
5명이면은 질문에 답하겠습니다. 6명이면.
He will answer that question if it's 6 best players in the world.
Okay. I wonder who they're going to be.
저희 팀원 모두라고 생각합니다.
And SKT, yeah, my team.
The League of Legends World Championship final is set, plus we look to next year for some Challenger League forecasts. I'm Ian Barker, and this is the leaderboard. It was Europe versus Korea in the League of Legends World Championship semifinals, but did the West squeeze out a championship contender? Unfortunately for European fans, they did not. Korea outclassed Origin and Fnatic across the board, ending both semifinals in 3-0 sweeps. With the wins, the KU Tigers and SK Telecom booked their spot in the final as Korea guaranteed a second consecutive title for its region. While the pros wrap up another big season, the North American amateurs are preparing for their shot at the top flight. Team Arena Online looks the early favorite for the automatic qualifier spot, sporting a roster with some top flight talent and some LCS experience under the belt. Imagine will look to ride Steelback's talent into another promotion tournament bid, while Enemy will look to bounce back after a rough relegation performance and a rocky offseason. These three, combined with the talent on Cloud9 Tempest, promise yet another exciting Challenger League as budding pros work to stamp their name on the LCS.
Welcome back. Now, we are indeed joined by the one, the only Steelback. If you need a quick refresher on who this man is, we've got you covered. Take a look at this.
Few players have taken SK Telecom to 5 games this year. Even fewer spent the rest of their season in the North American Challenger League. Once the starting marksman for Fnatic, Pierre Steelback Majaldi's career took an interesting turn after European darling Reckless returned to the black and gold, sending Majaldi into free agency just weeks after pushing the world's best team to its limit. Now one of the best Challenger League marksmen available, Steelback will spend another season looking to return to the competitive summit he called home just a few short months ago.
Welcome back again. We are joined by, as I said, Steelback, and this time talking to us live on the air. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm good.
Hey, man, thanks for joining us. Let's get right into things now. Did you watch Worlds this weekend?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so we had Fnatic, your former team, playing KU Tigers, getting swept. Bit of a surprise there to lose 3-0. Were you surprised by the result? What did you think about the match?
Yeah, I thought it would be more close than that. KU Tigers pretty much stormed them. The first game was close, like Fnatic threw their lead. I think they were like 6K ahead or something. And after that, I think they tilted a bit, or the mental wasn't there. So KU Tigers just won every game after that.
Yeah, they kind of steamrolled them after the first game. We saw the same thing with SK Telecom actually beating Origin in the other series. Were you surprised by that, or is it pretty much what you expected?
No. I think everybody expected that SKT would win against Origin. The first game was like the same as Fnatic. They were pretty close to win. But then I think SKT is just better, so I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah, we saw the sweep in both series. I have to ask you now, Steelback. We did see the 3-0 over Fnatic. Would it have been different if you'd been playing?
I don't think so. I don't think AD has that much impact in the game right now. I think top lane has the huge impact. I don't think I would have made anything different, honestly.
For better or for worse? Just pretty much the same as it is?
I don't know. Like, I don't know if I would have done like something better or worse.
It's tough to say. I have faith in you, though. Just putting it out there. I think you could have perhaps given an extra game. Just saying. We talked about SK Telecom T1 looking so good in this tournament. Now unbeaten. They went 6-0 in their group with Ever Gaming. And they went 3-0 over AHQ, 3-0 over Origin. Do you, as a pro player, do you see any weak spots in the team at all? Like, where would you attack them? How can you take this team down?
Well, SKT is playing a lot around the top lane. Well, that's the meta right now, so they're doing the right thing. Well, their top lane is really hard to do anything about it. I think I would focus on bot lane, maybe, because they tend to have losing matchups most of the time, so you should pressure bot lane and try to snowball from that. But it's still hard because SKT is playing really smart. So.
Yeah, they're pretty good, and they're pretty smart as well. They have good coaching, good players. They're going to play KU Tigers now in the final. Do you see KU Tigers potentially being able to win at least a game or even challenge for the series?
I think KU Tigers is better now, and since they won like 3-0 Fnatic, they're like pretty confident, I guess. I I'd say that SKT will win 3-0 anyway, because SKT is just way better overall.
Yeah, they seem pretty good. I did see a quote from Tiger saying they would not lose easily, but it's one thing to say that. It's another thing to actually play SK Telecom T1 and not get swept. Even if you play a good game, like we saw Origin do in the first game, for example, they have a good mid game, they have a good late game. They're just really tough to beat. I got to ask you, how do you keep it together? 40 minutes into a game, you've got a lead that Origin had. They had a pretty good lead, or at least they looked at it like they were in good position, and they just could not hold things together against a team that was so practiced, so disciplined. Is it tough to maintain confidence when you're that deep against a team like SKT?
Yeah, I remember when I was in MSI and we played SKT, it was the first team that when we were playing against and we were really ahead, we couldn't close the game that easily. They were really smart and it was really hard to close the game. And if you do one mistake, even if you're 5k ahead, they kill you and get so much ward. It's really hard to play against SKT. You have to play almost perfect to beat them.
Yeah, because they themselves seem to play almost perfectly. So it forces you to play at that same level. What was your experience like actually playing against SK Telecom T1, the team that's been considered maybe the best in the world? And we'll find out, I guess, this weekend.
Well, when we played SKT, I think they weren't as good as now.
Right.
They were already pretty good. So that was a nice experience. And we learned a lot because they were really good at wave management, at warding, at rotation. They were just really good at all of that, and it was really hard to do anything against them. Even though we got 2 games, the third game, they're just better in best of 5 with draft. They have more experience, I guess.
Yeah, well, what's different? I should ask you that, because people talk about having to beat the best Korean team in the best of 5 being different than beating them in a single game. What changes when you're playing an SK Telecom T1 or a KT Rolster in the best of 5 as opposed to in one game? How's it different?
Well, I guess since LCK and Korea and China are best of 5, they are a lot of experience in best of 5, so they just prepared better. They have draft, they have different strategy, and I think it's really hard to beat them. I think to be on their level, we need to have more best of 3 in Europe and NA.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing, that Western teams really would benefit from having the best of 3 or best, the 2-game series or wherever you do in China or Korea, having one of those options available here. Do you think that could happen, or do you think that's just Riot's not going to do it anytime soon?
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure, but I think they should do it because we see at Worlds that Korean team are European team are better now, but they beat Korean team only in best of 1.
Right.
And maybe if they had this best of 3 in Europe, we could compete and maybe win against them in best of 5. I think it's just that they have more experience than us, and that makes the difference.
Right. Well, even last year at Worlds, we saw Cloud9 and TSM beat the Samsung Galaxy teams in one game in the best of 5 series, but they couldn't win the entire series. So even going back to last year, the same thing was happening with the Korean teams. You played against SKT again. We mentioned that, but I want to ask you, because everyone has an opinion on this with SKT. Faker and EasyHoon. What's the difference between the two when the team plays with these 2 different mid laners?
I'm not sure. When we scrimmed SKT, Fabivan was doing pretty good against, I don't remember if it was EasyHoon or Faker. So the game day, they just switched to the other one because maybe of confidence. Maybe I think they're both on the same level. Faker is really good, but I think at the moment they are pretty much equal. So I think it's more about confidence. If he do a bad game, he just switch it with the other mid laner that has confidence and come and play.
Right, it makes sense. It gives them options, and they just happen to have more than 5 world-class players they can switch to at any given time. Do you think it would help for a Western team from Europe and North America to have a substitute player who's at the highest level as well? Because we don't really see that a lot from the Western teams.
Yeah, I think it would help, but I'm not sure if it would work with the European mental how it works, because good players get in teams and they don't stuck as a sub. EasyHoon, I admire him because he's in a team, he's really good. He could be on a main team because he's world-class player, but he's still staying there as a sub. So I think it's still hard for a player to be that good, but still a sub.
Yeah, it makes sense. It would definitely be a big sacrifice to make, and it is for those players to know they can't play every single game. It's a big attraction to be able to play every game at the highest level, especially when you're a great player. But they make it work pretty well, so maybe we could learn from their example. I want to ask you about playing for Fnatic. Obviously, in the summer split, they went 18-0, had a great run, won the LCS title. You also won an LCS title with them, but didn't have quite that 18-0 run. Did you see the potential for the team to have a perfect season, like to be that good in Europe?
Yeah. When we first started, I remember we started scrimming the first month, and we were not doing that good at the beginning, and then we started winning a lot of games in scrims, and we were improving really fast. And I always thought that the Fnatic team could be that good, yeah.
I want to ask you, because we saw Fnatic, we know they can play against the best teams in the world. They went 5 games with SKT with you playing in the lineup. They played very well at Worlds at times, but they seemed to run out of gas against Q Tigers. Did it hurt them to go 18-0? Because it was almost like they were never really challenged. Fnatic had a number of games during the regular season where they were challenged early. They might have lost early fights or something like that, but they could always come back. Like, did they need better teams around them to push them harder?
I think that going 18-0 is like really good for the team, obviously, but you don't have you don't see like a team that could defeat you, so you're like winning all the time, so you're not used to lose actually. And I think losing in that team, they were like tilting a bit, I think, because they're not used to lose. So yeah, I think if they had like other team that could challenge them, they would be even better and stronger mentally.
Do you think it might make sense for a team who was the best of Europe or the best of North America to perhaps try and play in Korea or try and play in China instead?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Yeah, why not?
At this point, yeah. I mean, Fnatic have gone as far as they can go in Europe. Obviously, they went a perfect season. So, what else could they do there? We'll see if that option comes up. I don't think. I think Riot, in terms of marketing, would prefer to have Fnatic in Europe because they're so popular there. So, we'll see if something like that can happen. I want to ask you personally. Was it ever hard for you to watch Fnatic go 18-0 and have this great run, knowing that it was your team that you played with so recently? Was it difficult for you?
Well, it just I think they're really good. So, and they're like my friends, and they work a lot, so they deserve it. Like, I'm not jealous or anything. I think they deserve to do that, to win that much games. Yeah. I just do my things. Yeah.
That's a nice thing of you to say. Going back to when you first joined Fnatic now, kind of rolling back to earlier in the year, what were your initial expectations? Because you're coming in as a younger, less experienced player. You're getting to play with guys like Yellowstar. He's been around, obviously, for a long time, and some Korean players like Huni and Rainover. What were your thoughts on what the team could do? Because many people thought the team was really in flux and maybe even like not even a playoff team at first.
Yeah. At the beginning, we were not sure. Like, I remember I was talking with Fabian a lot, and we were like, oh, I don't know if we're going to do well. And then we start scrimming, we start winning some games, but scrims doesn't mean that much. And when we won that first game in LCS, I remember it was against Elements, like nobody expected it. And I was pretty confident at next, and we start like winning a lot of games. So, and I thought like Yellowstar was really, he played for a long time, so he helped us a lot. And we had like young player with strong mechanics, so I was like, yeah, we can do it.
Obviously, you did it. You had a great season. You won the split. Now in the final, some people may have forgotten this. You played Unicorns of Love, and that was a crazy series. Went all 5 games, had games with a ton of kills. York getting picked by Unicorns of Love, just a lot of weird stuff. What was it like playing in that just hectic and chaotic series?
Well, Unicorn of Love is like all the time when we meet them. We have Fnatic before, like now they're like better, but we were really chaotic. Like we were playing a lot of team fights, and Unicorn of Love had the same playstyle. So all the time when we met them, like in scrims or on stage, it was like a lot of kills, a lot of going around and stuff. So, and Unicorn of Love had cheesy pick. So yeah, it's always a mess when we met them, I remember.
What was it like for you winning the LCS title as a new player?
Well, that went really fast because I didn't really play in Challenger Series before. I played the qualifier for Challenger Series and I lost it. And then I was playing solo queue and I got picked up. So yeah, from getting picked up from solo queue to winning the LCS title, yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty fast and definitely pretty cool. Now, you weren't done there. You then went to the mid-season Invitational, played in that tournament. What was that entire experience like for you playing at MSI?
Well, MSI, I think that's the thing that improved me the most. Like, I improved a lot as a player. Because I played against Koreans and they were really good, and I played against Chinese too. So I improved a lot at MSI. I'm just like sad that I couldn't prove myself after MSI because that's the moment where I improved a lot.
Yeah, there were some critics who said that you struggled in the group stage, but then had a really good series against SKT, like you improved throughout the event. Did you feel yourself getting better during the actual event?
Yeah, I felt like better and better every day at MSI. I think Fabian too, he improved a lot from MSI, he told me to.
Of course, the team decided to move on and bring in a replacement for you, Reckless, or Reckles, however you prefer to say his name. Do you think it was a fair move? Like, what are your thoughts now with hindsight? Because it happened months ago, of course, and you've both moved on. What are your thoughts on the move to the team?
Well, I think Reckless was a better player than me. So, and Yellow Star had a lot of experience with him. So I understand their move. I just think that they should have let me a bit more time because I was improving a lot. And I think I could have been better than him after MSI because I improved a lot from MSI. So I'm just going to prove it now that I'm really good.
You've also played in the Challenger Series now. You played with Imagine. It's funny, you played in the LCS and became an LCS champion before playing in the Challenger Series. You kind of went in reverse there. What was it like playing in the ACS?
Well, that's a huge downgrade. So it was like easy for me, obviously. I still tried to keep up my level and focus on myself. But yeah, it's like something new for me because I played in LCS. I didn't really play in Challenger Series. So yeah, it was pretty nice and there is less stress than in LCS.
Yeah, actually more than just playing from the LCS to Challenger, you went from the MSI to Challenger Series, so an even bigger difference there. You've now gotten the chance to play in Europe, to play North America, to play some international competition at MSI. What are your thoughts on the differences as it currently stands between playing teams from different regions, players from different regions? What are the big differences for you?
Well, in NA, I noticed that there is less kills than in Europe. Like, it's more control, it's more objective. Towers, even solo queue, I noticed it, that it's really slow and that you play more objective. When I came back to Europe solo queue, it was like a lot of kills, like deathmatch a lot. So I think which regions has their thing. So Europe is like more kills, NA is more control objective, and Korea is like everything. It's like both combined.
Right, Korean solo queue is also about going AFK at Fountain if you lose in the first 10 minutes. There's also that or opening mid, I guess. Like if you have a rough first 10 minutes of the game, there's also that. So there's ups and downs to different regions. What do you think has to happen to have Western teams truly catch up? Because we've seen, last year it was North American teams getting the playoffs and they couldn't quite get past the best Korean teams. This year, the European teams getting the playoffs can't quite get past the best Korean teams. What has to happen? What has to change for teams from either North America or Europe to break through in the playoffs of the biggest event of the year?
Well, I think they have to just implement best of 3, best of 5. I'm not sure if it will be enough, but it will help. And some teams might be able to beat Korean team after that.
Do you think there's still a gap in coaching and preparation comparing Korean teams to teams from the rest of the world?
I'm not quite sure because I was in Fnatic and Daylor was doing a really good job. I don't think you can do better. I'm not sure. So I think this year European coach improved a lot. So I think it's getting better in that way.
Well, I appreciate you joining us, Steelback. I want to get you out of here with this last question on your future because you have come a long way. You've had a very interesting career already, and I'm sure you have more to come. You've been linked with Imagine, with Gambit Gaming. What does 2016, next year, what does it hold for you? What are your goals?
Well, I just want to prove to people that I'm good and I'm LCS worthy. So I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. I don't know if I'm gonna play in Europe or NA. So you guys will know soon.
We'll be looking out for it, and I look forward to seeing you. And I believe, Steelback, just like I believe you could have made a difference against Q Tigers, I believe that you will come back with a fierce vengeance. Perhaps even add another LCS title next year.
Yeah,
Is that a good goal to have?
Yeah, win NA LCS after European LCS.
Yeah, you cover all the bases, then you go over and win the LCK, and you'll be done.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds good to me. All right, thanks again to Steelback for joining us, and thank you for watching. Be sure to tune in tomorrow night when Efren Salinas brings you Best of 3, the best fighting game show on the planet. Once again, thanks. I'm Jared Wynne. Follow the channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at daily.esports. Follow and like on Twitter and Facebook.esports. And of course, the best news and analysis at daily.com. Peace.